guys. Okay, so we're on lesson 4 today. So we're going to be talking a little bit about doing loops. So loops are really, really useful, and they're something that you really want to spend a lot of time trying to master. Okay, so and you'll see why they're really, really useful and make your code so much more efficient. And we'll start by putting in our enter explicit. So remember that is kind of like the spelling error. And we're going to, sorry, that corrects, finds any errors you made in the code. Okay, so we want to start a sub, and the sub we're going to call today is going to be counter, the name of the sub. Okay, so hopefully this is getting nice and familiar. Okay, so what we want to do, the first thing we'd like to do is to declare a variables. Okay, so I'm going to use the variable just counter as the first thing. And what we're going to do is we're going to set up ourselves a loop. Okay, and we'll show you why these things are useful as we go along. So the way that you do that is you write for counter. And so what we're basically telling is at the beginning of the loop, we're saying for this value, we're going to have it equal 1, 2, say 5. Okay. So basically what is happening is, and you'll see as we go through the code, but essentially what we're doing by putting counter equals 1 is we're assigning its first value of counter equals 1. Okay. And what we need is whenever we do a loop, so what we're actually doing is we're kind of bouncing through the code in a circular motion. So basically what we need is an end of the loop. And the way that the end of the loop is created is by putting the command next counter. So hopefully what you should be doing is putting that into your VBA editor. Okay, so the next step is let's see if we can get this to actually display a value. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to put, we'll put a cell reference in now. So work, now I always, as worksheets, we'll put in cell A1. So that's, sorry, and the worksheet's name is sheet 4. We're on sheet 4 at the moment. Okay. And so remember to change the reference here. It needs to be whatever your sheet name is down in the bottom that you want it to display on, and then the range, and we're going to put that in cell A1. Okay. So what we have a bit of code going there now. Okay. Now, what you'll also notice too, and this is just good practice in terms of being able to read the code well. So at the moment, we're doing really short pieces of code, but as you develop in your skills really quickly, you'll find that it gets much more complex. So you'll see that I've actually indented the commands in here. Now, the reason I indent the commands is that as I run my eye down the code, I can see, oh, this is the beginning of a loop, and the next time that it kind of counts through, basically is down here. So anything in between is going to be actions that are done multiple times as the loop progresses. So the reason I put that tab in is simply because it makes it easier to find where the loops are, and you'll find that this is actually a lot easier. It just makes the code easier to read, so it's something you should get into the habit of doing. Okay, so now what we want to do is we're going to run this now and see what it returns. So I'm pushing play, and I've just pushed play, and it's returned the value 5. Now what we want to do, and this is where we're going to begin to sort of develop a few different ways to see what the code is actually doing. Now, this is really important for when you have a problem. Something doesn't work as you expect. Okay, so there's a couple of different ways that I'm going to show you now to be able to test what's happening. Okay, so the first one is debug. Okay, so we can see what's happening in the code. I'm going to put debug and then step into. Okay, so that's step into there, and you'll notice it's got a little short key there that says F8. F8, we'll show you what it does in a second. So basically what we're doing now is that you see how it's highlighting the first name, the yellow. Now, if I want to, so what I can do is I can progress through the programming step by step and see what's happening by pushing F8. So the first code is it says, okay, there's a sub. Okay, the next it goes to counter. So if I place my cursor above it, what it's telling me is I've got a declared variable, counter, and it says equals empty, which means nothing at this stage has been defined for counter. Okay, so if I push F8 again and I have a look here, we can see if I place my cursor above counter, I can see what value it has at this stage of the code. Okay, so I can see the counter is now at a value of 1. So if I push F8 again, counter is still at a value of F8. Now let's have a look what happens now. So if we go push F8 again, it progresses to the next stage. And counter now equals 2. So what's happening with this loop is that it's counting up by ones. So, okay, so if I push F8 again, okay, I can see, okay, it's moved on and now counter is still at a value of 2 and it's reached the end of the loop and it's going to cycle back to the top again. Okay, and we're going to see that happen again and now it's 3 and 4. So this is a way of cycling through and seeing what the values are of your code. So when something doesn't work, you can actually step through the code step by step and go, oh, that actually gave me an unexpected value, and then start to break down why it is that it's causing a problem. Now, the other really useful way to do it, so that's one way to do it. So I'm going to get out of debug mode now. Just by pushing stop, I can reset it. Now, the other way I can do it, if I want to just see what's happening with the code, is I'm going to put in a message box. Counter. So that's the other way you can do it. So if I want to see what's happening in the code, each time it hits that message box, whoops, counter, sorry. Again, I always leave little, to make the code easy to read, you'll see I've left a space. Okay, now if I push play, okay, we'll see that it tells me the first time it reaches that box, counter equals 1, counter equals 2. You'll see also that what's also happening is not only is the message box changing, but if you have a look at the value of cell A1, it's changing as well because it also equals the value of counter. 3, 4, and 5. Okay. So now if we take this away, of course, you don't see, and I'm going to take that away by I'll just take it away actually. Oops. Okay. Now if I do this and I rerun the code, so I'm going to reset the value of the cell back to 0, and I just push play, I don't see what's actually going. It just produces the number 5 for me. So by stepping through and showing that message box, you can kind of see what's happening. Okay. Now, if we want to do that, what we can do is that we can create this loop. Okay. Now, another thing we're going to show you, now counter, this command here is just your standard default of it counts by 1. But let's make it 10 this time. And let's add a little bit of code at the end, which is an extra command called step 2. Okay. And let's see what happens to the values. So if we push play, of course we don't see anything. We see the value of 9, which is kind of a little weird given that we're supposed to be under 10. Why did we get 9? So have a think about, if you've got that code in, try and work out why. Pause the video and have a look why you think that it's come out at 9. Okay, and then I'll explain it in a second. Okay, so let's have a look at the actual code now. So I'm going to debug it. I'm going to use the debugging tool, and I'm going to step through the code. Okay. So, whoops. I'm going to hit F8. Okay. So the counter value at this point is empty. Okay. And F8. Okay. We see that the first time it goes through the loop, remember that it says counter equals 1. Okay. So counter equals 1 now. And if we go step through the code the next stage, okay, counter is still equaling 1, and then it's going to go back to the top of the loop. And it's stepped up by 2. So that's what that actually means. So if we want to step it up by 2, it means that it started at 1 in the first loop, and then it's gone to 3. And of course, once you flick through it again, you can expect that the next value is going to be 5. Okay. And then 7, and then 9. Now, once it's completed this value, essentially what this code does is it's telling you that while the value of counter remains between 1 and 10, it will keep looping. But once that condition is fulfilled, so if we go around one more time, it's greater than 10, so the code is over. Okay, so if we wanted to do it the opposite way, so let's say we wanted to do a countdown and we wanted to do it from 10 down to 1. Okay, before we run this, and this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to get it to step down by -2. So it's going to go start at 10 and it's going to step down. So the question is, what value would you predict is going to, at the end of this piece of code, is going to be displayed? So pause the video, have a think about it, and then push the button and see what happens. Okay, so we've run it, and we get a value of 2. And again, it's the same sort of thing. If we want to see exactly what's going on, we can step through the code by using the VBA as the debugger tool. And we can see count is empty when it first starts. Counter is equaling 10, which is expected because you set that as 10. Okay. And then we go through the second loop, and now it's 8. Now it's 6. Now it's 4. And now it is 2. Now, the same sort of thing that applied previously is that this loop will continue until, as long as the values remain between 10 and 2. Okay, so if we do that, then what's going to happen is the last time we loop through this, counter is going to equal 0. It's no longer falling within this range, so it's going to exit the loop and go to the next piece of code. Okay, which means, so that's kind of how a loop works. So why don't we now get it to, and we'll pop it back to just 1. And we'll make it from 0 to 10. So let's say we want to get this now to display the value of 10. Okay, and let's say what we want to do is we want to get, and we'll do it on the spreadsheet now, we want to get the code to display, to count to 10 for us. Each time it goes down a cell, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So that's what we want the code to do. Okay, so for that to happen, so if we just do a little bit of a practice code down here, I'm going to create a new sub, and I'm just going to call it test, just for the purpose of what we're doing. Okay. And what we're basically, if we wanted to do this manually, what we would do is we'd say, well, we've got our sheet, say 1. And And this kind of, sometimes this is also helpful for kind of working out the logic of how to actually do these things. So if we wanted to create that effect, what we could do is we could say, well, here's a line of code, okay, and we're putting in cell A1, okay, and in cell A2, we're going to cell A2, we're going to change it to cell A2, the value is going to be 2, and then if we wanted to do it again, we can put in another one. So we can do this in a different way. And that's basically what we're trying to get the piece of code to do. So I'll do maybe another 2. I won't do the whole 10. I now want that to go to A4, and the value is 4. Okay. Okay, so if I want to run this piece of code, I'm just going to clear the thing. It's going to produce. Whoops, I've forgotten to change my code. Try again. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so you've got your 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, if we want to do this with a loop, we can do this far more efficiently. But the thing is, we know that we can get the value, each one of these values to change. So if we were using the code up here, we could use counter, okay? And the counter is going to go through and change the value each and every time. But we also need the cell reference to change so that it goes down by 1 each time. So how are we going to do that? Okay, so we're going to use, I'm going to use counter because we know that we know from this code here that the pattern, we know that 1 equals 1. So whenever each row, each time the value goes up by 1, the row number also goes up by 1. So we can actually use counter for both. Okay. So how we can do that is we need to insert that variable into the cell reference so that we can use it to change. Okay. Now, if we do that, what we want to do is we want to say, well, we want to put a bit of text in there, which is A, the row name, and we want to put in an and we want to put in counter. Okay. So what we're now telling it to do, and we'll just run, I'll just clear here, is we're basically telling it each time it goes through a loop, we want to put the range as A, whatever the value of counter is, it equals counter, which basically means if it goes through as 1, it's going to be A1, value of 1, A2, value of 2. And so what you do is you get it to count. Now, of course, if we want to, we can now also see our steps more clearly. If we wanted to change that to 2, for example, and we better clear our sheet again. And you can see what we're getting, what we're getting. And if we have a think about why we're getting those sorts of values, okay, so if we're stepping through by 2, the reason why it's every second column is because the value of the counter goes up by 2, okay? And of course, you can extend this to be 100 and 1, and you can, it's going to give you a count to a 100 very, very quickly, okay? So that's what a counter actually does. All right. So let's say now what we want to do is that we want to change the output a little bit and put in a message as well as a value. Okay. So if we want to do that, we might say we want to tell the user the row number is 2, 1, 2, 3 dynamically. And so what we can do is we can say, okay, we've got our reference for our cells. It's going to change with each cell, and we can say, bring a bit of text and say the row number of, row number is a space and enter. Okay. Sorry, I can't see my code properly here. And if we run our code now, what we see is it's producing that information. Okay. All right. So what we want to get you guys to do now, and it's also advisable at this stage because you're starting to get a few commands to make sure you document it. So for example, you might say, if you were doing this and you want to make sure you understood exactly what you've done, you might put something like sets up loop. Okay. To step through one at a time. Okay. Alrighty. So what we and then you might have here something like loops loops back to for statement. Okay, so what you want to do with these sort of things is, because you won't remember the code as we build up more and more unless you do it a lot, you won't remember the code. So what you want to do is you want to have little examples that you can keep for yourself, and you go back and say, oh, what was that command again that did whatever it is. Okay, so make sure you're keeping a record of all those sort of things. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. So and if we want to, so the task for today, just to finish off, is we want you to create a macro, and we want the macro to display the 2 times table. Okay, so i.e. 2 times 1 equals 2 to 2 times 100 equals 200 in cells in spreadsheets, one after another. Okay, and you should include a button to activate the code. So you might remember how to do that, but if you don't, make sure you ask the teacher. And good luck with it. All right, guys, catch you later.